Happy Friday morning, everybody. Sports guy Chris checking in. Of course, Friday morning here on the West Coast, early afternoon on the East Coast, and right about lunchtime in the heart of the country. I am very excited for today's live college football show. I've got previews for all of tomorrow's conference championship games. Super pumped to be here. So we've got 7 games, guys, going. The first one will actually be tonight in the Pac-12, and the other 6 will be tomorrow. Big games, implications for the college football playoff and everything. So let me lead off. Unfortunately, yesterday we had the news break that there was a positive test within, I believe it was the Coastal Carolina program or Louisiana Lafayette, one of the two, but because of some tracing afterwards, there's some position groups that are completely under quarantine procedures. So therefore, Coastal Carolina and Louisiana Lafayette will not be able to play in the Sun Belt title game tomorrow, unfortunately. So bit of a bummer there. I was looking forward to seeing Coastal Carolina again. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the Chanticleers this week, and they're ranking the college football playoff. They're 11-0. They've had a great season. That would have been a great opportunity for them to pick up another win. They've already beat Lafayette earlier in the year. It was Lafayette's only loss. So unfortunately, that one won't get played tomorrow, but we do have 7 other games going at it. So I'm going to jump in. Let's start with the game that's going to happen tonight, and that is in the Pac-12, where we have unbeaten 5-0 USC, who's sitting at number 13 in the college football playoff rankings. They will be going against Oregon, who actually had not earned the right to represent that division of the Pac-12 in the title game. The Ducks are 3-2. But because of a breakout within the Washington program or subsequent tracing, they've got some position groups that are totally unable to practice and meet. So Washington was deemed unable to play in this game, and therefore the Pac-12 bumped Oregon into their spot. So we've got Oregon subbing in. They are taking on USC, who's 5-0, and the Trojans have now snuck up a little bit more. You know, I think there's some folks who were hoping they'd be ranked a little bit higher in these latest rankings. But honestly, guys, when you look at USC, they should have 3 losses. You know, they keep falling behind early, rallying back, and winning these games in miraculous fashion. But one of those games they should have lost was to Arizona at Arizona in their second game of the year, a game they were fortunate to squeak out, just like their opener against Arizona State. Arizona, of course, has went on to lose 70-7 last week to Arizona State, got their coach fired. So when you look at USC, yes, they're 5-0, but if you actually put tape on of them and you watch their games, there's a very difficult argument to make that they are a top 5 or 6 or, football team out there. That being said, they have an opportunity to win a conference championship and to get to 6-0. So it's a big opportunity for them. The Trojans are going off as 3-point favorites right now. Oregon, I think everybody was expecting a little bit more out of the Ducks. You know, their 2 losses, they struggled to stop the run big time. Their first loss against rival Oregon State, where they were, somewhat of a significant favorite. The talented Oregon State running back they have up there ran all over them and ended up pulling off the upset for the Beavers. So Oregon's dropped a couple games that, they were supposed to win going into the season. The defense was supposed to be their strong suit, and actually it's been the weaker side of the ball. The offense has been better. So when you look at Oregon, it's been a little bit of a surprise. You're not really sure what to get out of the Ducks. Because USC has been in so many close games this year, and they've been able to come back and win those games, I'm going to take the Trojans. The game is going to be in Los Angeles as well, which I think, of course, favors USC. That one's tonight, 5 p.m. West Coast time, 8 p.m. East Coast time. Again, Trojans are going off as a 3-point favorite. I expect this to be a close game. I don't expect it to be much more than a 3 or 4 point margin one way or the other. That's just kind of how USC's games have gone this year, and Oregon has been in some close ones as well. Expect some points to be scored. I don't know if either team is going to do a very good job of stopping the other one. I expect this game to definitely be up in the high 20s, maybe even a 31-28, 31-27, right in that range. But I'm going to go with USC again because of their ability to pull out some close games so far this year. So First one in the books, Pac-12 title game tonight. That's what I'm looking for in that game. Looking ahead to tomorrow and our big conference title games tomorrow. Starting off in the morning, we have the Big 12 title game. That one will be getting going at noon East Coast time. It's a 9 a.m. start out here on the West Coast. And of course, we've got Oklahoma going against Iowa State. The Sooners come in ranked number 10 in the latest college football playoff committee rankings. Iowa State at number 6. Both teams have a pair of losses. Iowa State did win the head-to-head match in Ames early in the season, 37-30, in what was a terrific football game. They trailed for a good portion of that game, were able to rally back in the second half and then hang on down the stretch for the win. Right now, the Sooners are going off as a 6-point favorite. Based off of that, guys, I am hammering Iowa State away here, especially if they're going to give me 6 points. And this is the reason why. Oklahoma's looked very good of late. Their defense has looked much better. They were missing a couple key players in that first matchup. They were without their running back. They were without the talented defensive end that they have. Both of those guys missed that game. They've been back since then. Oklahoma's looked better. The defense has actually played a lot better, probably better than they have in years, guys. But all of that being said, their last couple games are against Baylor and Kansas, the two worst teams in the Big 12, and two teams that have struggled defensively and at times to be able to move the ball with sustained drives on offense. So when you look at it, yes, Oklahoma's defense has been better as of late, but just how much better, we're not entirely sure. So all of that being said, when you look at Iowa State over their last 6 or 7 games since Halloween, they've been one of the most efficient teams in the country. I jumped on, did a little live yesterday and touched on that point, but they're right there with Alabama and Clemson as far as team efficiency on both sides of the ball. So when you look at this, it's a little surprising Oklahoma at a 6-point favorite. Obviously, the committee likes what they've done of late. And that win where they just completely ran, in-state rival Oklahoma State off the field a few weeks back, and Oklahoma State was coming into that one, a little bit higher ranked than they are now. I think that got everybody's attention. So probably, the best game the Sooners have played certainly this season for sure. But when you look at this series over the last few years, the last 4 games between Oklahoma and Iowa State, including the one this year, have gone like this. So earlier this year, Iowa State pulled it out 37-30. Last year, the game was at Oklahoma, and the Sooners won 42-41. Iowa State scored literally in the last play of the game, and they went for 2 and the win instead of sending it for overtime. They didn't get it, so the Sooners hung on to win that game in Norman as a heavy favorite. 2018, Oklahoma again as a heavy favorite. The game was in Ames. They won that one 37-27. And then you go to 2017, that game was in Norman. Oklahoma came in as a 31-point favorite in that game, ranked number 3, and Iowa State won that game 38-31. So their last 4 games between the two, you've got a 7-point win for Iowa State, a 7-point win for Iowa State, a 1-point win for Oklahoma, and a 10-point win for Oklahoma. When you look at that, that tells me I think this is going to be a close game. The Cyclones have kind of had Oklahoma's number as far as being able to play with them as of late. I expect this game to, be a good competitive game to start things off. Iowa State does play defense. They're one of the few teams in the Big 12 that does play defense. And again, their efficiency the last few weeks. Look, if I'm Iowa State, I think they're going to be a little ticked off. They're a touchdown underdog going into this point, into this game, having been atop the Big 12 standings all year long. They finished a game clear of Oklahoma and really a game and a half, considering they won the head-to-head. And taking into consideration they beat the Sooners by a touchdown early in the year, I think the Cyclones are going to be a little fired up here coming in as a touchdown underdog. But look, I'm going to take the Cyclones all day here, plus the 6 points. I think they cover that. Could Oklahoma win this game? Yeah, definitely. They've been playing a lot better. Like I said, they've been playing their best football of the year. But again, take it with a grain of salt, the last couple of games against Baylor and Kansas. So, I expect if Oklahoma is to win this game, it's going to be a 3 or 4 point game. It will be close. So, therefore, I'm taking the Cyclones plus the 6. But honestly, I like how they match up. Brock Purdy, the Iowa State quarterback, this is going to be his 4th start now against Oklahoma. He started since he was a freshman. He's a junior this year. Yes, Spencer Rattler has gotten better as the season went on, and no pun intended, he hasn't been rattled as of lately as he was early in the season, late in games. So that should bode well for the Sooners as well in this one. But I like the experience factor. I like that this is going to be the fourth game that Purdy has under his belt going against Oklahoma. Because of that, I think Iowa State can get this done straight up. I'm going to take the Cyclones, guys, in a close game. They keep their college football playoff chances alive by squeaking one out against Oklahoma. It could end up being the game of the day, and that one's going to kick off early tomorrow. So keep an eye on that one. That's what I'm expecting to see. And I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Oklahoma jumped out to a lead. That's something they've done all season long. Iowa State has been the better team over the last 4 games, like I've talked about in this series, especially in the second half of games. So even if the Sooners jump out to an early lead, I still think Iowa State is going to rally back and make this a hell of a game. So there you go with the Big 12. I think the Cyclones stay alive in the college football playoff race here. Moving along, to the Big 10 title game, we have Ohio State and Northwestern. The Buckeyes, of course, were off last week, much ballyhooed cancellation of the game against Michigan. First time that game wasn't played since 1917. You have the Buckeyes going off as a 20-point favorite. The folks in Vegas apparently really like what the Buckeyes bring to the table offensively. And when you compare the two teams, Iowa State's 5-0. They got just 5 games in. Northwestern was able to get to 7 games. They're 6-1. The Wildcats won a very close game with Iowa earlier in the year, won by 1 point. Snuck one out against the Badgers where they forced 5 turnovers in that game, a 17-7 win. But then they followed that game up by going on the road and losing to a very underwhelming Michigan State team. So, as far as this game goes, you've really got the elite Ohio State offense, and they've looked elite this year with Justin Fields and his athletic ability, and honestly, an elite Northwestern defense. They've been one of the best in the country over the last couple of years. I think this year's defense is better than last year's, better than the year before. They've done pretty good. They've came to play in every game so far this year. You can't necessarily say that of the Wildcats offense. They have struggled at times offensively this season. Really only 2 games where they showed up, in the opener and then in a close victory in that opener, and then last week in a 28-10 victory over Illinois. Basically every other game in there, the Wildcats have struggled offensively. Because of that, I think Ohio State's going to win this game. I just don't think the Wildcats have enough offensive firepower. That being said, I'm interested to see how Ohio State and Justin Fields plays against this level of defense. The Buckeyes just haven't played really a defense this year that could even be considered a good defense or a pretty good defense, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against an elite level defense. That Indiana game, guys, they won 42-35, but they did struggle a little bit. Fields threw 3 picks in all of last year, including the college football playoff semifinal loss to Clemson. Fields only threw 2 picks, guys. So he threw 3 in that game against Indiana. And had the Sooners been able to take advantage of the Hoosiers been able to take advantage of the momentum swings in that game, Indiana very well could have won that football game. So, Ohio State, they are elite offensively, but they have had a few problems here or there taking care of the football this year. Northwestern, one of their specialties is forcing turnovers. So, I feel like the Wildcats can be in the game, and they definitely have a chance if they can force turnovers. I think the key for them is they need to force two or more turnovers, and they need to be able to find a way to come up with at least 2 or 3 sustained drives that take time off the clock that end in points if they're going to have a chance in this game. Because of that, I do expect it to be a somewhat competitive game. I think the 20 points is a little bit too much, again, just because of Northwestern's defensive ability. They are second in the nation in scoring defense at 14.57. But again, I think you can make the argument that the Wildcats have yet to play an offense as elite as Ohio State. Ohio State is yet to play a defense as elite as Northwestern. Because of that, I'm expecting the game to be within a couple touchdowns. I could still see Ohio State winning this game by 14 or 15 points, pulling away a little bit at the end. The offensive firepower is going to get it done. So I'm going to take the Buckeyes in this game, but I do expect Northwestern to cover the 20. If you have a chance to jump on an alternate spread of a couple more and you can get another point or two for the Wildcats at 21 or 22 points, go for it. I definitely think they will keep it within that margin. Again, 20 just seems a little bit too high. So that is my take on the Big Ten title game. I expect the Buckeyes to get it done, and by doing so, kind of solidify their spot in the college football playoff. So moving along, of course, I want to go to the SEC next. We've got the #1 team in the country, of course. Alabama will be in action in that one. Going against Florida, there's been a lot of chat this past week with Florida's placement in the college football playoff rankings. A lot of people just not really understanding how the Gators only dropped one spot despite a bad loss to LSU last week. They were a 24-point favorite at home, and they lost that game. So, I think everybody is pretty well in agreement out there that the Gators are being overvalued at #7 right now. I mean, they're number 11 in both polls. I've got them at number 11 as well. So it's very difficult to just make the argument to have them that high. That being said, with their placement at #7, you can make the argument that the College Football Playoff Committee has created a pathway for them to get in if they can somehow upset Alabama. And to be honest with you, as I look at this game and break it down, it's a difficult scenario for that to happen. Look, I think Florida can score some points in this game. Alabama, early in the year, did struggle in a few games. They gave up a ton of points and a ton of yards to Ole Miss early in the season. But since then, they really ratcheted up on the defensive side of the ball and have been one of the best teams in the country, both offensively and defensively, in yardage and efficiency. But you look at the two quarterbacks, guys, and we've got probably the two best quarterbacks in the country going at it in this game, and your two front runners for the Heisman. Mac Jones might have pulled ahead of Kyle Trask just with Florida losing that game last week. But you look at these two guys. Jones comes in 3,300 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, just 3 picks, and a QBR of 96, which leads the country. And then you've got Kyle Trask, of course, for Florida. He is just going bonkers this year. He leads the nation in passing yards, 3,717. First in touchdown passes with 40. He's only throwing 5 picks, even with last week's setback against LSU. And he's got a quarterback QBR of 90.3. So, again, your two best quarterbacks in the country going at it. I think Trask and Florida's offense is going to score some points in this game on Alabama. But the problem is that the Gators' defense has not been as good as, I think a lot of people thought they were going to be this year. They're not as good as they were last year or the year before. They're a decent unit, but, they have struggled at times. They gave up 41 in the loss at Texas A&M earlier in the season. They gave up 37 to LSU. Last week in that home loss, a freshman quarterback making his first start for the Tigers. So not necessarily a good look that instills a lot of confidence on that side of the ball going into this game. And look, my take on Alabama is I just think they have been, there's a big gap. They have been substantially better than the rest of the SEC all season long. I still think, that Florida and Georgia and Texas A&M are good football teams, but Alabama's on a whole nother level. So I'm going to take Alabama in this one. I just don't see on the defensive side of the ball, Florida being able to come up with enough stops to be able to win this game. Again, I think Florida's going to score some points. I would flirt with the over in this one. I think this could be a high scoring game because of that. And again, it's been a few weeks since Alabama's seen an offense like the Gators. They haven't played a quarterback all season long, nearly the quality of Kyle Trask. So a lot of interesting factors to take into consideration here. But, I like Alabama. I think they're going to get it done. The 17 points as far as that goes, Alabama has done a great job of covering a bunch of massive spreads all season long. Guys, I could see them winning this game by 14 points. I could see them winning this game by 24 to 27 points. So as far as that goes, you could take the point spread if you want to in this one. I expect it to be a little bit closer early on, but again, as the second half wears on in this one, I just don't think Florida's defense is going to come up with enough stops. So I'm taking Alabama. They've just been so dominant this year. So I'm riding the Crimson Tide in that game. Moving along to what could possibly be the game of the day in the ACC, we've got Clemson coming in. They're ranked number 3. They're 9-1. Their only loss, of course, is to Notre Dame, playing Notre Dame, coming in number 2. They're unbeaten in the ACC title game. Rematch time, of course, the Fighting Irish won what was an exceptional game earlier in the season in South Bend, a 47-40 overtime thriller. Clemson rallied back a couple times in the second half of that game to force overtime. Of course, Trevor Lawrence was out dealing with some COVID-19 protocol issues. They were missing a couple of key defensive players in that game as well. Ian Book played great. He was the best player on the field. He only had 1 touchdown, but his ability running the football was a big difference down the stretch in that game and in overtime to propel the Irish to a win. Clemson's going off as a 10.5-point favorite. I think people are really liking the fact that Trevor Lawrence is going to be healthy for this game and playing, and they're going to be healthy defensively. And when you look at the kind of the urgency factor, look, I'm in agreement with pretty much everybody out there. I think Notre Dame can afford to lose this game and still be in, because they're going to have a win over Clemson from earlier this year as well, and the resume is there. So it'd be the Irish's first loss. It's going to be very difficult to penalize them for losing to Clemson, who's fully healthy and would be in the playoff, and the ACC champion. So either way, even if the Irish were to lose, I think they're in the college football playoff either way. Maybe if they lose somehow, 60-10 or some ridiculous margin like that and aren't even competitive, that would cause the playoff committee to pause on them. But I don't see that happening. I see this being a good football game. I think Notre Dame is going to play well. I think Ian Book has done a great job this season. I think he's going to be fired up and ready to go for this game. But I think Clemson understands that urgency, that even if they lose this game, it's going to be a question mark as to whether they're in the college football playoff. They could be in. Thank you. They very well still could be in, even if they lose, depending on how the other games go. I mean, let's be honest, Clemson does look like a top 5 football team, and they're not getting much of a knock for losing that game shorthanded at South Bend earlier in the season. So, but that being said, if Clemson does lose and you've got a 2-loss Clemson up against possibly a 2-loss Iowa State team who's ends up being a conference champion, it could make it difficult for Clemson to get in. So, that being said, I like the Tigers to win this football game. Again, I think they're going to be playing with a sense of urgency. I think they're going to be fired up to show Notre Dame that, hey, a fully healthy Clemson team, you guys can't beat us type of thing. But everybody's is kind of just taking it for granted that Clemson's going to win this game. And I don't necessarily see it being as easy as 10.5 points. I think Notre Dame covers that spread. I think the Irish are in it. I think it's a good football game, but I think Clemson's able to pull it away and they win by 7-10 down the stretch. But that extra 0.5 point, I liked Notre Dame to cover the spread, but I'm taking Clemson to win the football game. Again, I think, Dabo Swinney's going to have them playing with a sense of urgency, fired up, understanding, hey, we need to win this game to make sure we punch our ticket. And I think that is how that game is going to play out, which leaves us, guys, with our last 2 conference title games for tomorrow. We've covered the major Power 5 conferences and how I think those games are going to go. But we've got 2. One could still have a big impact on the college football playoff. The other one, a little bit of a surprise. I'm going to touch on that one. That's going to be the Mountain West title game. Of course, the Mountain West was one of those conferences that got kicked off a little bit later in the season. So, most people probably don't know that there's a pretty good story going on out there with San Jose State. The Spartans are actually 6-0 They've looked pretty good this year. They beat a quality San Diego State team. They're actually the team coming in atop of those Mountain West standings. They'll be playing Boise State, who's 5-1. But let's be honest, guys, it's been a long time since somebody finished ahead of Boise State in that conference in the regular season standings. So hats off to San Jose State. They just snuck in the college football playoff rankings last week. They're at number 24. I've got the Spartans at number 22. Look, they play really good defense. I think they're being a little bit undervalued. You probably haven't had a chance to see them play. Their games are usually, later at night out here on the West Coast. They did beat a very good Nevada team last week. Nevada's 6-2. So when you look at San Jose State, they've got that win. They've got that win over a San Diego State team that's one of the better defensive teams in the country. So they do have a couple noteworthy wins. I think they do deserve to be ranked. And, just a few years ago, this was a program that was pretty well lost for quite a while here in the dust on the fringes of college football as far as the program goes. But they've come back to life in a big way. And if they were to win a conference title, that would be a pretty big deal for them and their program. And, that being said, they are a 6.5-point underdog against Boise State. That one's a little surprising for me. I like how the Spartans play defense. They're actually 13th in the country in scoring defense. They only give up 17.5 points per game. Granted, I think they haven't played an offense as good as Boise State, so it'll be interesting. But I like the Spartans. They've won some close games this year. I think they're being undervalued. Boise State, of course, has been the traditional power as far as these two teams go and that conference goes. But I've had an opportunity to see the Spartans play a few times, and I like their defense. I think because of the defense, they're going to do enough. They can get some stops, and they can cause enough headaches for Boise State that they can rally to win this game. For sure, I'm taking San Jose State to cover the 6.5 at the very least. If Boise State wins this game, I think it's going to be, within a touchdown. So I'm going to ride that. If you can get the Spartans on an alternate spread of 8 to 10 points, definitely jump on that, because I do think for sure it's going to be within a touchdown. So upset, not really an upset in my opinion, but based on the point spread, yeah, I think the Spartans get it done. So there you go, one of the upset picks. And that leaves us with the final conference title game for tomorrow, and it is in the American Athletic between number 23 Tulsa, who will come in at 6-1, and number 9 Cincinnati at 8-0. This one is going to be at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. East Coast time. They're starting at the same time as the SEC title game later on at night. Because of that, I think the American Athletic in Cincinnati has a great opportunity. Most of the other teams are going to have their games done in the books. A&M is going to play tomorrow against Tennessee on the road. It's going to be an early start. That's going to be one of the early games. So I don't know if that's going to benefit Texas A&M too much if they're able to beat a underwhelming Tennessee team that has really underperformed all season long. They're just 3-6. So with this game being at 5 p.m., I like it. I think the American Athletic has set this up to, have a platform for Cincinnati. There's been a lot of people really disgusted, not really understanding why the Bearcats dropped last week and really the last 2 weeks without being in action in the college football playoff rankings. They started at 7. They've now slipped back to number 9 despite not playing games. One knock has been, they don't have any wins over teams currently in the top 25 and so on and so forth. Look, they've got a 2-touchdown victory over Army, who's 8-2 right now, was ranked at the time just outside of the top 25 at the moment. They have a complete blowout victory over SMU, who is ranked at the time and unbeaten. They're 7-3 right now, just outside of the top 25. They have a 49-10 win over Memphis, who is 7-3. And then in their last game back on November 20th, the last time that the Bearcats were in action, they have a 36-33 win over Central Florida. That was their closest game of the year, in a game in which, that was probably the best offense they've played all season long. So Cincinnati, I expect them to be fired up. I expect them to be upset with their placement in the rankings. And look, last week, the College Football Playoff Committee awarded Georgia by beating a 25th ranked Missouri team who went into that game at 5-3, and they moved Georgia up. The Bulldogs, of course, will not be playing tomorrow. Cincinnati is. They're playing number 23 Tulsa. So by that logic that they used this past week, if the Bearcats are to win this football game, they should get awarded and moved up based on what the playoff committee did last week. The question is going to be, how far can they move up? I think they have to pass Georgia again. And based on, I think, the fact that Florida is going to lose that game to Alabama, I think you have to then pass Florida as well. And then it's going to be down to Iowa State and Texas A&M. So even though the Bearcats dropped all the way back to number 9, is there a possibility they could leapfrog up far enough? Yeah, I think there is, especially if they look impressive in this game. They're a 14.5-point favorite. If they can dominate this game like they did earlier in the season against a couple of quality teams, that might do it. But look, with them playing at night and one of the last 2 games to kick off tomorrow, I think it's a great, great opportunity for them to showcase what they can do. Because of that, I'm expecting Cincinnati to win this football game. I think it's going to be a close game in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if Tulsa, has a lead, comes out, gets a lead, just because the Bearcats haven't played since the 20th. They're probably going to be super fired up again with their placement in the rankings, really wanting to get out there and try to jump all over Tulsa. Because of that, I could see Tulsa, being in this game in the first half. But I think Cincinnati, once they settle in and settle down in this game and start playing, they're going to have the opportunity to pull away in the second half. So, and I think knowing that they need to not just win this football game, but they probably need to look pretty impressive and dominant to be able to make an impact on the College Football Playoff Committee. I expect them to do that. Tulsa's a pretty good football team, guys. They're not a fluke. The one loss, they're a legitimate team. So, and the Bearcats will deserve credit for winning this football game. But my pick here, look, Cincinnati's fired up. I think they're ready to go. I think that, they might have been able to play this game last week. These 2 teams were scheduled to play each other for the last game of the regular season. They both canceled. I think Cincinnati was still trying to get fully healthy. I think Tulsa was having a few issues, and they both just decided, hey, we're both already locked into the American Athletic title game next week. Let's just take the week off so we can get fully healthy for that game. But they might have been able to play this game, last week. So Tulsa has played one less game than Cincinnati. So even though the Bearcats have been off for a while, I don't necessarily seeing it being a huge advantage, for Tulsa with Cincinnati being off as long as they have been. So for those reasons, and Cincinnati understanding the urgency of needing to show up and have a complete game, I think the Bearcats are going to be ready. I think they pull away in the second half and they win this game. And we've got a little bit of a scenario when it comes to the college football playoff. Hey, what's up? How's it going? So I appreciate all you guys jumping on today with my live. Those are my picks for the title games tomorrow. So again, to run through everything, I like USC tonight over Oregon in a close game. Expect that to be a 1-score game, but I expect the Trojans to pull it out. The Big Ten title game, I'm expecting Ohio State to win that game by 14 points. Take up Northwestern to cover the spread if you like to. But take the Buckeyes to win that game. Again, I don't think the Wildcats have enough offensive firepower. Alabama and Florida in the SEC, I expect points to be scored. If you're going to flirt with an over-under in any of these games tomorrow, maybe the over in this one tomorrow, guys. But Alabama to win that football game, I just don't see Florida's defense being able to get enough stops down the stretch in that football game. The ACC, again, I like Clemson here to pull it out, but I do think it's going to be a 7 to 10 point game. The Mountain West title game, I like San Jose State to pull a small upset, even though they're the unbeaten team and the ranked team heading into that one with Boise State. They're a touchdown underdog, but I like San Jose State to get it done behind their defense. And then closing out the slate tomorrow, I like the Bearcats to get the win. Cincinnati over Tulsa, and I expect them to do it, pulling away in the second half by multiple scores, win that game by 14 to 20 points. Getting it done down the second half, and Cincinnati to at least be alive in the college football playoff committee, final set of rankings and for one of those spots in the playoffs. So in closing, guys, what does that mean for the college football playoff? Well, unfortunately, I'm not predicting a whole lot of chaos because I'm taking the Buckeyes to win and I'm taking Clemson to win. But if Ohio State struggles against Northwestern, you still might be able to make the argument to get Cincinnati up there. But look, I still think Northwestern's going to have to upset Ohio State for Cincinnati or Iowa State to sneak in. Could that happen? Yeah, it really could. I know I'm taking the Buckeyes to win, but that could happen. And honestly, I mentioned this before, even though A&M is going to play Tennessee tomorrow, even if the outcomes go somewhat chaotic, I think A&M, even though they're at number 5, is going to have the toughest path to get in. They still could. Look, if Oklahoma beats Iowa State, if Northwestern upsets Ohio State, then I think A&M has a chance, especially if Cincinnati were to lose to Tulsa. Those 3 games go that way and A&M wins tomorrow. Then I think A&M, the pathway is there for them to get in, in that number 4 spot. So there you have it, guys. Sports Guy Chris giving you the full rundown and my picks for tomorrow's conference title games. I'm super pumped for that slate of games, guys. And we'll see what happens as far as the college football playoff goes. I'm going to give you the teams that are still alive, the 4 that are in right now. You've got A&M that's live. I just kind of went through the scenarios for them to get in. Iowa State, I think, is still very much alive at number 6. There is a pathway to Florida, so the Gators are still kind of in the conversation. And then I do think Cincinnati is still in based on where things are and the unfortunate cancellation of the Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, Lafayette Sunbelt title game tomorrow, I think actually really does open it up a little bit more for Cincinnati as well. So to at the very least get a New Year's Six bowl game, but to continue to throw their hat into that college football playoff conversation. So there you go, guys. A very happy Friday to you. Excited for the weekend slate of football and all of those big games tomorrow. I appreciate all you guys jumping on and joining me today. Again, you can find me, Sports Guy Chris, Instagram. I have a blog on Scorum, YouTube, of course, as well. And I've launched the Balls and Beards podcast with my good friend Mikey. We have our 3rd episode in the books earlier this week. We will be getting our NBA preview episode out this weekend for you guys before the NBA season tips off on Tuesday. Again, Balls and Beards podcast, you can find that on all the major listening platforms, Spotify, Anchor, Google Pocket Cast, and so on and so forth. A special thank you to the Spotlight Sport Network and everybody in that group, a great group of content creators. I'm very happy and fortunate to be hooked up with these guys. Jake Silva at the Snake Sports Talk Show as well. A special shout out to him as well. So again, Sports Guy Chris signing off, guys. A very happy Friday to you. Those are my picks for the games tomorrow. I'll be back next week and we'll give you the rundown. We'll see how I did with the picks. And I will be back next week, of course, as well. I'll jump on. I'll do some lives tomorrow, what it means as the outcomes come in for the college football playoff. We'll keep you updated. Happy Friday, guys. Enjoy those games tomorrow. Signing off, Sports Guy Chris. We'll see you again soon.